This is the CHGO Cubs Podcast. My name is Corey. I am joined, as always, by Brendan. We are coming to you on Sunday, July 7th. And Brendan, the Cubs have won a series. Look at them.
We did it. We finally did it. We won a Sunday game and a series.
Yes.
Look at us. We're on the
Now,
way up.
should you look at the Angels' 37-52 record and weigh that against the series they won? No, just
They
enjoy
won
it.
a World Series this century, so they're a legitimate team.
It's been like 2 weeks since they had won a series, so this is nice. We're going to savor that. Lot to talk about on today's show. The week that was in Chicago Cubs baseball, obviously losing 2 of 3 to the Philadelphia Phillies, and then coming back to win 2 of 3 here in the weekend series from the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim. I don't even know if they still do that, or are they just the LA Angels? It doesn't matter.
Know. Doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
We will talk about Justin Steele, who finally, Brendan, mercifully, the seas have parted and Justin Steele has won a game. He has
they woke up that day. Finally, they woke up on a Friday, beautiful afternoon.
I do want to talk about Justin Steele. He's on an incredible run. His last, I think, 6 or 7 starts have been absolutely the type of stuff that we have become accustomed to with Justin Steele, and certainly putting any of, you and I certainly did not share this, but there were some frivolous concerns in those first 2 starts when he was coming back from a hamstring injury that never made a lot of sense to me, but he has certainly put those to rest if there were any of them still lingering. We will talk about that. Hayden Wesneski, really good on Sunday, a nice way to kind of close out this series against the Angels. The Cubs have a new face in the bullpen. Hunter Biggie is up with the big league club. I know someone that a lot of people had been really wondering when we would see and when they were going to bring him up. I know, at one point today, our guy Brian, great prospect writer, pointed out that Luke Little and Hunter Biggie were in the bullpen. Little, big, but also just 2 guys from the system, finally, as opposed to some of the other options that we've seen for the Chicago Cubs. But Brendan, I think we can start here. I think these are rolling out as we are live on the air here on this fine Sunday. If you're in the YouTube chat, hop in, let us know what you're thinking. If you're listening later on your podcast feeds, also hello. As we are doing this, just before we came on the air, it is announced that the Chicago Cubs do have someone to represent them in this year's Major League Baseball All-Star Game that is just over a week away, and that is none other than Mike Imanaga II.
I thought you were going to say Michael Busch for a second. I feel like they deserve to be punished, the entire organization. But that being said, Shota actually deserves that all-star nod. Exceeded your expectations, my expectations.
Absolutely.
The fastball is played up more than most thought it would. Every bit of deserving, and thank God that we have him on this team, or it could look a lot worse right now.
Yeah, I mean, really not much else you can say about his first half, at least, for the Chicago Cubs in his debut year in MLB, his debut year in America. And, certainly someone who has been doing his part to help the 2024 Cubs succeed. And even if that is a futile effort as this season goes on, very nice looking contract, Brendan. When we go back and compare what some of the estimates were for some of these starting pitchers that were available, some of the contracts that did end up getting signed, you look at Shota's right now, and even though he's on the older side of some of the guys that were in that market, you feel very good about that particular contract that you have in the future that you can have with Shota Imanaga. And, I feel like in years past, we have some guys who were clamoring to get their first all-star appearance in a long career. You think of someone like Kyle Hendricks or Nico Horner getting that shot for the first time. It's cool to see Shota come over, perform the way he did, and immediately get that recognition. That's got to be a very cool feeling for someone. I imagine there's a lot of unease and uncertainty when you switch leagues, you sign a big contract, you're coming to a new country. So that's got to be very cool for Shota. So certainly congratulations to him. He deserves it.
Are you surprised Dansby Swanson did not get the nod for the All-Star game?
Are you starting trouble?
I don't know if you mentioned him in your lead in, but he's been getting a lot of angst from the fan base, and a lot of
Sure.
it is justifiable. So
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to talk about that later on, but we
I
certainly
believe
can.
I saw our guy Ryan Herrera tweet today that one of his hits this afternoon was his first since June 29th.
Okay.
So
Well, that's not
that
good. That
that'll
would
bring
be
out the ire of
that
folks.
would be
Yeah.
10 days, I believe, if my math is
Yeah.
correct.
I mean, an interesting conversation. I think in this episode for sure, I want to talk about Justin Steele. I do want to talk about Hayden Wesneski start, maybe a little Jamison Tyone. He continues to look really good out there. Talk about the stuff going on in the bullpen for sure. Ian Happ with a big week. Obviously, the 2-homer, 6 RBI game on the 4th of July to help the Cubs steal one from the Phillies. So a lot to talk about, but certainly as we are at the halfway point here, a little over 81 games, obviously 1 week away from the All-Star break. So whatever you like to use as your kind of midway point of the season, we are kind of at that point, really, no matter what. At some point, yeah, an interesting conversation to be had that, I think last year, obviously a pretty successful debut year for Dansby Swanson relative to his expectations and, who he is as a player, despite the offensive performance down the stretch specifically. But, he was a 4.5 win player, WRC plus right around where he had kind of been most of his career, kind of came as advertised. This season, not so much. And I think one of the concerns with him long term was how is that bat going to hold up? How's it? And in year 2, I think
It
it's
always
fair
happens.
to at least ask some questions about that.
This was always a concern how Dansby's bat ages. We talked about him even before the Cubs had signed him, looking at how a profile like his ages. The big concern with Dansby was that the power he has does not is not enough for the amount of contact he makes. Came over to the Cubs, had about 73% contact rate. 22, 25 home runs, a lot of home runs for a shortstop. But when you compare the power outputs with the amount of contact for the amount of contact he had made, it was in the lower tier for power. So the concern was, okay, well, if his power starts to go and if he's making low contact, that's a recipe for poor aging. At the start of last season, he actually was showing signs of more contact. We had talked about this in April and May of 2023. I liked it. The power wasn't there, but he was making more contact. For me, that signaled adjustment. And I would like to see Dansby make more contact even as he continues to age. But last season, that was a positive sign. This season, it's been worse. All the wheels are falling off. His contact rate is 30% right now. It's going back up to where it was during the early part of May. And of course, you've seen it. The power's not there. Most interestingly or discouraging about Dansby's performance right now is that the damage against fastballs is absent. He's been one of the best fastball hitters in the league. All of a sudden this year, he's not hitting fastballs. If
Yeah.
you look at just the lower portion of the strike zone where fastballs are thrown, he's hitting most of those on the ground or he's just missing that pitch.
Yeah.
He's never had a season in which his fastball value against was in the negatives. And we're seeing that right now. So the question then becomes quickly, can he turn this around? Or is this representative of fast aging? That would be the worst case scenario, that this is representative of fast aging. Then again, around the league, there's a weird trend going on where offense is down across the board. You're seeing guys who are typically high productive offensive bats struggle. And then you compound that generality across the league with Dansby's different scouting report, more breaking stuff away, fewer fastballs. There's a lot of uncertainty. I would not say, oh, I'm freaking out, but I'm not going to be optimistic about it. But if you want to be optimistic about it, Dansby throughout his career has shown weird kind of blips, almost like how we talk about Morel and other guys, where all of a sudden he's
Yeah.
hitting for more power, even though he used to debut as a heavy contact guy. I
I
still think it's possible, but I don't think it's representative of fast aging yet.
yeah. I do know one thing that jumps out immediately, you just look at his Fangraphs page, you look through some of the stuff, almost a 52% ground ball rate so far this year in 2024, significantly higher than really any other year of his career. You go back to the beginning of his career, he was at around 46, 47%, but most of the time in Atlanta, he was around 37, 38, 39%. So this year, nearing 52, you do not want to be putting the ball on the ground that much unless you have PCA's speed to
which no
balance
one
it out.
does, by the way.
Which only PCA does.
Right. So this graph is illustrating what you just said. Anything that's blue is a ground ball. Anything that's white or red is a fly ball. So these are his ground ball and fly balls against fastballs from last season to this season. Look at that red circle. You see more white, more red, and low fastballs down. Look in 2024 on the right, you see more ground balls in that same zone. That has to change. If that continues, then he's not going to be the high shortstop offensive bat. The question is always, well, why is that happening? And can that be addressed instantly? I'm not sure. He was working on some mechanical things in the offseason. He was posting that on his YouTube page. Something's weird is going on.
The defense has come around. He had some weird stuff, especially with the throwing early in the season. His defense has come around.
That was so overblown, by the way. I get everyone's always upset about that.
He's going to be, it's hyper fixated on because the offense isn't there.
I understand that, but we can't be so sensational about, he made 3 bad throws. He's in almost 100th percentile again for defense.
So that's what I'm saying. His defense has come around. It looks very good. He's going to always provide that. It is an interesting thing as we go toward this trade deadline. And we sort of I think one of the key things that they may need to do, a phrase that I have become interested in using to describe it, is shuffling the chairs on the deck.
Because I've never heard you say that phrase.
Right, because the Cubs haven't had to do this, right?
Okay.
But it's one of those things where we talked about it, bloated payroll, pushing up against the luxury tax, and you're in last place in your division. You're one of the worst teams in the National League at this current moment. So it's not that easy to just say, just go and add and go get a superstar. You have to move people around in order to do that. And you have to decide who of this group is worth keeping. How do they fit into those plans? Because you're already spending too much money. So it's not as simple in other years or for other teams that might just say, you know what, we're one starting pitcher away. Let's go spend that money and we're going to go win the World Series. That's not the position you're in. You're kind of full up. You've got $20 million at half your positions in your infield and outfield. It's not that easy. So you have to kind of shuffle the chairs on the deck, so to speak, in terms of
they had all off season to do that.
Well, now they're going to have another one. So isn't that great?
Great.
I do, quickly just want to talk about Justin Steele before we hop into our first ad break here, and maybe we'll start the conversation. We can continue it. But just another really good start from Justin Steele in the month of June. Justin Steele put up a 2.13 ERA in those 6 starts. He was fantastic. And then again on Friday against the Angels, he goes first complete game of his career, 9 innings, 2 hits, 1 earned, 2 walks, and 7 strikeouts. And he does all of this on just 95 pitches. Just a brilliant outing from Justin Steele. And we talked about it when he blew up at the dugout. Like, this is one of those things that you want to be this guy, you got to be that guy. And he has been. And he continues to do his part in terms of setting the tone and being the top of the rotation arm that the Cubs need him to be. That was a fantastic start. I don't care how bad the Angels are. I don't care how bad their offense is. He was fantastic in that game. And, you look back, really dating back to his last bad start was he gave up 5 runs in a little over 6 innings on May 22nd against the Braves. But since then, he has been spectacular. 7 innings, no runs, 5 innings, 1 earned run, 7, 1 earned, 6, 0 earned, 6 2/3, 2 earned, 7 1/3, 2 earned, 6, 3 earned, and then 9, 1 earned. Like, that is a really strong string of just really, really quality starts. But we can dive more into Justin Steele. I know I want Brendan's thoughts on how he's utilizing some of the new stuff that he and Ryan Herrera talked to him and Tommy Hanavi about, and we will do that when we come back from our first ad break.
Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. With killer last minute deals, all in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. They also have last minute deals. Save up to 60% off buying last minute for sports, concerts, whatever entertainment you want. You want to go see Justice Steele pitch another shutout next week? Go to Game Time, use our code CHGO. Take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with the Game Time app. Download the Game Time app, create an account. Again, use that code CHGO for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create an account, redeem code CHGO for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. It's grilling season. Get your pork. People who are active need more protein than the average American. In fact, the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, Dietitians of Canada, and the American College of Sports Medicine recommend 1.2 to 2.0 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight per day for athletes, depending on their training. And the International Society of Sports Nutrition also recommends that people who are involved in a general fitness program or who are interested in optimizing their health eat low-fat, high-quality sources of protein, which include lean cuts of pork. Our friend Grillin' with Dad will be here at the office. Actually, he was already there at the office, Corey, when you were there. I saw all those different delicious dishes he was making. I wish I was there.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Elevate your protein game with lean pork, a powerhouse of natural goodness. Savor the flavors, savor the gains, and celebrate any occasion by enjoying the best pork produced by Illinois pig farmers. From your sausage and bacon for breakfast to pulled pork or juicy chops hot off the grill is an entire season dedicated to pork and the people behind it, paid for by the Illinois pork producers. Generations of commitment.
So continuing on Justin Steele, Brendan, I see it in our YouTube chat and I've seen it on social media as well. I think he represents a sort of broader question. Is anybody untouchable on this roster?
Of course not, right? But the goal is to win as many games as possible right away. So
Yeah.
if you trade Justin Steele, you are
I
giving
don't see it.
away multiple years of pre-arb cost controllable wins.
Yeah.
That value has to be very high in return. Is he untouchable? Absolutely not. But the return has to be that what Justin Steele produces with
Yeah.
minimal risk. And that
Yeah.
typically never aligns with any trade
I
partners.
I brought that up because I see it, you know, our guys Garrett and James talking in the YouTube chat, amongst other people. And like I said, you see it on social media as well. I think the issue is you need the top of the rotation arms. I understand, of course, you know, Justin Steele is what is he, 30, right?
He's
I think
28.
28. Oh,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I did not mean to age you,
I mean,
Justin
you
Steele.
kind of did, you know.
But I think the problem is that yeah, if Jed Hoyer was going to enter into a full scale rebuild, tear it down, everybody that's playing is 19 years old, maybe that's a different discussion. But that can't happen. It can't be allowed to happen, and they're not well positioned for that anyway. Even if that's what he wanted to
He
do.
has 3.5 years of team control.
Yeah, and you need to be winning, and you need top of the rotation arms. We just went
Yeah.
through this problem of them not having enough or any at all top of the rotation arms. In my mind, you can't trade the only one that you have. I think I understand it because of his contract situation, his age, how well he's performed. I understand that, you know, it would be one of those things where fans or people might fantasize that they could get some massive return, whatever. But you'd be very lucky if any of those players were a number one, number two starter, wherever you believe Justin Steele slots in. That's 28. That is 4 years away from free agency. That is a brilliant situation for the Chicago Cubs. They're going to need it. They have to figure out how to get better. When I'm talking about, you know, moving the chairs on the deck, he's not one of them. He's not making $25 million, like, you know, on a 7-year contract when he's 32. He's not one of the guys that's locked into some questionable situation. He's in a great situation. It might be tempting because you think maybe you can get a lot in return, but Cubs already have a very highly ranked farm system. They have plenty of guys that are 19, 20 years away. We don't need more of them. What they need is major league talent, people that can help them at their major league level. I just don't see how moving Steele. I think I can hear the argument for basically everybody else, but for Steele, I don't see how the team ends up in a better position because of it.
Again, no one's off the table, but
Sure. Yeah.
Steele last season, 5 wins above replacement, enters free agency in 2028. You said it. We said it. 3.5 more years team control. You look at the projections for next year, 26, 27. We're talking about a total win accumulation with a range between 6 to 16. The Cubs need, if they were going to trade Justin Steele, to get someone who generates that many wins at a cheaper price. I don't think that's quite possible. And to go off what you're saying about the musical chairs, whatever was it, musical chairs or chairs on the deck? I don't like that analogy, but whatever it was. They have the problem that we're likely going to face and talk about even this episode. They have a high volume of 18 to 28 million dollar contracts with guys who have not reached their top end extreme outcomes yet. We want Seiya to get there. We want Bellinger to replicate what he did last season. We want Ian Happ to continue what he's doing right now. But really, Steele has reached that top tier outcome already. And he has
Yeah.
3.5 years left at
Yeah.
that cheap rate. I
Yeah.
really doubt they end up getting
Well,
what they
but
want for Steele.
and so for me, and I think this isn't something that's on the table for me. I'm not even considering it. Like you said,
It's just
anything
so
goes.
unlikely.
Well, but what I was going to say though is I understand why it might come up, because you look at some of these other contracts and they just don't seem particularly easy to trade or envision that you would get the type of return because someone would have to be taking the contract attached to it. Jamison Tyone, a great example. He would look very good for a team that is struggling in their pitching market and things like that. That being said, he's a multi-year contract for a certain amount of guaranteed money, not as easy to move, not as enticing, if you will, for a team looking to just make a quick addition for a 4-month run here to finish out this season. Just curious. I was just curious. I thought it was an interesting kind of thing to talk about, because I do think that it's going to be talked about. Everybody might be on the table at this point in terms of what the Cubs are doing. So that'll be really fun to get into.
It's
I
one
love.
way of describing it.
Yeah.
For another year.
I do want to talk about Hayden Wesneski, who was really good on Sunday. I know he's a very interesting case. The home run ball, really a big problem for him in his last several starts. But Sunday against this Angels offense, really able to hold everything down. 6 1/3, just 1 hit, no earned runs, 1 walk, 2 strikeouts. So not a big strikeout total, which sometimes we do see from him. Kept the walks down, and he kept the ballpark in the yard. Overall, a 3.67 ERA on the season. Just a nice start from Hayden Wesneski. And again, with all the injuries that this team has had, you look at Jordan Wicks, Javier Assad, Ben Brown, et cetera, and how much they've had to deal with in the starting staff. We've talked so much about how they're going to need these guys to step up. They're going to need guys to be able to play multiple roles, whether that's short relief, long relief, coming in and starting every so often. So for someone like Hayden, it has not been an easy task, I don't imagine, to constantly kind of be changing what his job is, what his outlook is for the rest of the season, et cetera, et cetera. And, whether the Angels are bad or not, Hayden's young. He's getting these opportunities for, just it's early in his career. It's good to see this development. I was, very impressed with his start today. And I'll say this candidly, like, I've grown pretty frustrated with him. This from our text messages
Oh, really?
to each other. But I got, I was getting pretty frustrated with how
Frustrated is
frequently,
one word to describe what you were sending me.
just
So we'll go
so
with
frequently
that.
giving up the homers. I mean, that start against the Phillies, even earlier in the week, was extremely frustrating. He kept throwing fastballs down the middle of the plate to Trey Turner, and Trey Turner kept hitting him for home runs. It was it was genuinely frustrating. And then look, I like guys that show emotion. I got no beef with that. But the kind of like every time he gave up a home run, I'm like, Hayden, you've given up 12 homers in your last your last 6 outings. I don't know if you need to react that way every time. But this was a really nice bounce back start. And really overall, you look at his body of work on the year, even despite those, prior to this outing, it really was a ton of home runs. I mean, the ball flying out when he was pitching, even for giving up all those home runs, like his overall numbers on the year look pretty good. So I'm curious, like at this midway point, like obviously it was a nice start on Sunday. Just as we transition this season, we don't have to, do the eulogy on the 2024 Cubs today, but some of this season does turn into, okay, well, if they're not going to make the playoffs, if this isn't working the way that they thought it would, how do we still get value out of this season? And you and I have talked a ton about the missed opportunities for those things, waiting too long to have Christopher Morel playing third base so that you came into the season with a big question mark instead of a question answered. Not bringing up Matt Mervis at the end of 2022 so that when 2023 started, again, another question mark that you had to spend and waste a bunch of money on the horrible contract of Trey Mancini because you weren't sure what Matt Mervis was or if you could commit to him, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm curious, when you look at this, what do you think of what you're seeing from Hayden Wesneski and, just what his progress is so far through 2024 as we continue to think about, okay, how does everybody that's currently on this roster fit into this roster, whatever that looks like post-trade deadline here?
It's important to preface expectations. My expectations for most guys, including Morel and these young guys, is always them reaching their optimal outcome, their optimal athletic performance, everything. I use Justin Steele as an example of someone who has reached that, who went through a lot of changes in his pitch repertoire, his stuff pretty fast within a year and a half time span. Your frustration with Hayden is with maybe some of the, which obvious, is the home runs. My frustration with Hayden, and maybe just the Cubs in general, is a slow experimental phase, if that makes sense. He's using the same type of stuff he used when he was called up from the Cubs in 2022, whereas Steele at the end of 2021 was using a sinker one every 4 pitches. Going into 2022, you saw how everything changed in June. All of a sudden, it went to more of a cut ride, four-seam fastball as his dominant pitch type. In fact, that cut ride became actually a cut ride fastball, whereas before it really wasn't. So they were able to rule out what worked and what didn't work for Steele pretty fast. For Wesneski, it's been too slow. And that's for me the frustration behind him. It doesn't mean I don't think he can get there. I think he's actually a valuable pitcher for this team because he eats innings and the numbers aren't really excruciatingly bad. It's just far below my expectations in my projection for him in 2022. The way I saw Hayden progressing was using that sweeper in 2022 that we saw, but somehow changing a hard pitch type, whether it be the four-seam fastball or going more with a cutter. And it's a good contrast because Jameson Taillon had problems with his four-seam fastball last season. And one of the reasons why we're seeing Taillon have success is because he's throwing a cutter almost like once every 3 pitches. And it's offsetting some of the volatility that you saw with four-seam fastballs. As I watch Hayden from start to start, I'm looking for those extreme changes, those extreme blips and stuff. And we haven't really seen that. Now, against the Angels today, he threw more cutters in his past few outings, threw more cutters than he has since May 29th, 15% of his pitches, but still not enough. Like, I'm concerned that the fastball ultimately won't play up enough, especially to left-handed batters. And I'm also worried that the sweeper, when he doesn't command it well, will continue to get eaten by left-handed batters as well. So until I see any type of like inspiring changes to offset those lefty problems, I don't know if I can boost Hayden's projection, but he's still valuable. And I do think there's a possibility we eventually see Hayden reach his optimal self. Just going too slow.
Yeah. I mean, and look, we'll talk more about, I want to get into some of the offensive stuff. Ian Happ his numbers overall on the season, a big week here this week, looking really nice. I want to talk about Michael Busch, homer on Sunday. Looks really good. So I do want to talk about some of those things. We'll talk about that more. I was just going to say, you look at that start against the Phillies, all things considered, it wasn't horrible. He's just making really bad pitches to a really good hitter, and that gets frustrating. You look at some of those pitches, it's like, dude, you can't throw that to Trey Turner. You shouldn't throw that to anybody at the major league level, but you're not going to want to do that to Trey Turner.
That's the margin of error he has. It's super thin. It's like Steele can get away with that because his fastball is unique with that cut right profile that most guys don't have. So I need Hayden to have something like that, which is not possible, but something just to offset that error.
But as we've seen, these guys are valuable. The depth is valuable, and continuing to see these guys grow, even if they don't all turn into top of the rotation guys or all-stars or anything, still valuable. As you're seeing this year, injuries happen, your depth gets tested, guys' effectiveness goes in and out. You need these types of players to be able to come in and play these different roles. And Hayden has done that pretty well for the most part. So I do want to talk about Ian Happ, Michael Busch, some of the guys on offense, and we will do that in a second after a quick break from our sponsors.
Penrose Brewing, Geneva, Illinois. Seltz Up hard seltzers with real fruit, led by Lemon Seltz Up, a national gold medal winning hard seltzer with real lemons. They created our unique twist on a lemon shake-up with a house-made hard seltzer and pureed lemons for a throwback to warm weather and county fairs. Also available is the Lemon Tee-Up, a half and half inspired hard seltzer. And just released this year is a transfusion seltz-up inspired by a popular golf cocktail with grape, ginger, and a lime. Penrose is available at your local beverage retailer or visit Penrose's taproom in Geneva. For more information, go to penrosebrewing.com or follow them on social media at Penrose Brewing. Get ready to be the most stylish of your crew this summer with Cuts. Most guys would wear a t-shirt every day of their lives if they could. The problem is most t-shirts are not acceptable to wear at work or out on a hot date night, Corey. Today's sponsor, Cuts, has finally changed that. Cuts t-shirts are such high quality, wrinkle-free, and so buttery soft that you can look like you're dressing up even when you're dressing down. Yeah, you heard it. That's wrinkle-free. You never have to substitute comfort for fashion ever again. Dive into summer with Cuts. Embrace the summer state of mind with Cuts. For a limited time, our listeners get 20% off their entire order when you use code CHGO at checkout. That's 20% off your order at cutsclothing.com with promo code CHGO. Please support our show and tell them we sent you. Experience a perfect blend of style and comfort with Cuts Clothing.
All right, Brendan, let's jump into some of the offense. And, let's start with Michael Busch. Again, hits the homer, his 11th of the year on Sunday, 2 RBIs in the game. Overall, his numbers now, 264 batting average, 359 on base, 457 slug, good for a 132 WRC plus. Brendan, 4th of all qualified first basemen in Major League Baseball in terms of wins above replacement. You look at a lot of these numbers, OPS, WRC plus, whatever your flavor happens to be. Michael Busch really up there in the better performers of first baseman in this league. Not the absolute top, of course, but in that top percentile mix. It just is a really exciting development, I think, for this team. You can look at a lot of what has gone wrong, what has gone well, and we've certainly talked about a lot of that. And as this season plays out, we will continue to talk a lot about that. But for your 26-year-old first baseman getting this type of run at the MLB level for the first time, I believe he still counts as a rookie, doesn't he?
He does.
I never remembered how that worked because of Almora. I feel like Almora was a rookie forever.
What are you doing? Okay.
Well, you understand. So I just stopped paying attention to what the rules are on what makes him. So
he's a rookie in my head.
Yeah. But when you trade, a former top draft pick of yours, a young, talented left-hander in Jackson Ferris, you're certainly putting some stock into the guy that you're getting over. And given the uncertainty we've had at the position since Anthony Rizzo left us. And it makes it, that made it sound like he was dead.
Yeah.
He's not. He's just a Yankee. So, but
Feels like he's
when
dead.
you've had that uncertainty at the position, whether it was Frank Schwindel, Alfonso Rivas, Trey Mancini, Eric Hosmer, Matt Mervis, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, to make a trade like that involved a significant prospect, and to have him performing this well now into July. And he's gone through periods where he really struggled, and he's battled himself back out. He's made the necessary adjustments. And to be sitting here with a 132 WRC plus for Michael Busch on the season just looks really nice. And when we talk about what is this team going to do at the deadline? What are they going to do next year? How do they add star power? How do they do this? How do they do that? What doesn't hurt, Brendan, is a guy who is not ARB eligible until 2027. Playing like this and just being someone that hopefully he can continue this through the rest of the year. Of course, there's still something to prove. This isn't a, done deal just as of this moment. But if you can slot that in for something like this type of production, really, really helps Jed Hoyer or whoever may be building this roster. That is a very easy one to pencil in, and it makes your job a lot easier when that player doesn't cost you 20, 25, $30 million.
Obviously, the most encouraging trend of the season so far from the offensive side. I still need to see more. It's great we're seeing basically him match the projections and then some. It's great that he's gone through adjustment phases. Craig Counsell did limit his playing time after his hot April start, in which he had 5 straight games with a home run, whatever it was. Since June, you're seeing the numbers go up. You're seeing some stabilization. You're even seeing him hit lefties well. He had a home run against, I believe, Matt Moore today, Sunday against the Angels, a lefty. His profile is unique. It is, I don't want to draw the two parallels, but it looks a lot like Dansby Swanson's profile when Dansby was performing quite well. The similarities between the two are they don't make much contact and they don't particularly hit for that much power. That's where the similarities kind of end. And they also do have good chase rates. What I want to see from Busch is just more plate appearances. I would like to see him make more contact. I would like to see some of those strikeouts go down. He still has a quite high of a strikeout, even though he's improving recently. But he's a weird player for me because he's going about producing in a way that most guys in his production tier don't do. It's a long swing. It's a somewhat slower swing, but he barrels up consistently. A lot of bloop hits up the middle to the left side of the field as well, almost like what you saw.
375 BABIP.
Yeah, and so the
Behind
question
only
kind of
Stephen Kwan in the league.
Okay, if he's Stephen Kwan,
Very similar player.
Yeah, exactly like. But it's similar to also on that BABIP note how we talked about Bellinger last year and the expected weight on base average. But Bellinger had a ton of soft fly ball hits to the pole side, and that's how he got his base hits.
The big difference, though, is that Bellinger was striking out 10% less.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, to your point right there, you can kind of reduce it down to that. Can the contact quality continue to get base hits in the manner in which he's producing? I don't really know yet. I need to see that for an entire year. And I don't want to be like, oh, a Debbie Downer or whatever, but I think we have to be realistic. Like the numbers are great, 350-ish weight on base average, but he's doing it in a way that to some degree is volatile. That's what I'll say.
Well, and like I said, it's there's still more to be proved, not a done deal whatsoever. And I think one of the things that I'd like to see more of, let's have some run against lefties. At this point,
I think he's going to get the chance to do it.
Yeah, what do you have to lose at this point? If it turns into a developmental year, turn it into a developmental year. Let him get that experience. Learn everything you can about him. Let him learn everything he can about Major League pitching and what he can do against both sides. And you don't need to limit it. It's not to say that you stop trying to win games, but obviously a lot of the calculus early in the year was he's young, he's a rookie, he's getting this run for the first time. Let's be careful about these matchups. He's kind of proven he can handle it, at least to a certain degree. Give him a little more. Extend that leash a little bit. Let's learn about it.
defensively, he's looked pretty good the past month too. I was harsh on him.
Yeah.
He had a lot of like weird footwork misplays in April at first base, just receiving throws. I was very frustrated with that.
Yeah.
A lot better the
Yeah.
last month.
He
And
has
he's
definitely
making
looked a lot
great
better.
plays even on ground balls laterally to both sides. So
Yeah.
I'm pretty impressed with this, just the off the bat ball defense from at first base.
So yeah, like I said, this isn't something where you can slot him in for a 130 WRC plus or something like that for the rest of his career. But as far as, we're 4 months into this season, as far as early returns go, it's a really pleasant one. It's just one that's nice to see because, you
Well, it's
compare
the
it to,
only pleasant one.
yeah, very different players and scenarios, but you compare it to when Mervis came up and he was rocking a 400 OPS. And it was like, they can't even play this guy. This is so
Yeah.
bad. Like, I don't know what to even say about this. So you just compare that to like, okay, maybe this isn't, certain things aren't sustainable or there are more adjustments to come. But as we sit here, heading toward mid-July, this is a very nice start to that trade and to this experiment at first base. I do want to note our friend in the chat, David Snyder, said, "Hey, Corey, don't throw shade on Frank Schwindel. He's raking for the Long Island Ducks, hitting over 300." For the record, no shade
For
toward
who?
Frank the Tank.
The Long
Uh,
Island Ducks.
yeah,
Okay.
no shade toward Frank Schwindel. The only point I was making was after Anthony Vincent Rizzo, the Cubs cycled through a lot of non-long-term solutions. Let's put it that way at first base, and Frank was one of them. So that was all. No shade. Did I enjoy watching him play? I don't know. It was a very weird period
Well,
of
it
our
didn't
fandom.
work. So whatever that process
I don't know. Did I enjoy that? I don't know.
no, whatever that process was needs to be refined.
Either way, yeah. Someone else who has, really gotten their overall numbers on the season in a very nice place is one Ian Happ. And I think he continues to be a very interesting discussion, Brendan, because I do think he represents a decent portion of kind of what has gone wrong with this roster construction. And that's not any fault of Ian's. Ian is now sitting, he's got 13 home runs, obviously the 2-homer game on July 4th. But depending on, again, what particular numbers you prefer to use, 241, 354, 445 slash line, 129 WRC plus. That WRC plus would be the highest that he's put up in a full season in his entire career. The only one higher than that was in 2020, which, as we always discuss, wasn't a real season. Nope. So it doesn't count. Nope. Sitting at a, OPS right around 800, things like that. The issue and kind of the crux of this thing is you'd look at his numbers and you'd say, okay, a 350 WOBA, 129 WRC plus, 800, give or take 10, 20 points OPS, pretty good for a corner outfielder. You look at the going rate for what players like that make, especially someone that's won a couple Gold Gloves now with Ian Happ, and you feel like what he's getting paid in terms of his contract is actually pretty well in line with the going market rate in this league. $20 million average annual value. That is very fair value for the production that he gives you overall from game 1 to game 162. Problem is that a whole team of those guys, or that kind of being your peak, him and Busch right around the same WRC plus, Seiya a little bit under at like 122. These guys, the problem is that you're missing the star that brings it all together. Ian Happ, Seiya Suzuki, like I said, 122 WRC plus, Michael Busch, 130. Those guys, as you're, say, scattered around in your lineup, but maybe from 5 to 7, or, one of them hitting in the 3 hole with your slugger hitting in the 4 hole, something like that. That's a complete lineup. Looks really good. If you're getting into those guys as you go deeper in the lineup, looks really good. When those are your best hitters, and as we've seen for the majority of 2024, the bottom 3 of your order, 7 through 9, are some of the worst hitters in the league. That's a problem, Brendan. You're missing the star, and the bottom portion of your lineup just isn't good enough. And I see this phrase kind of being thrown around, or some version of it, but it's like their performance has been pretty good. Pretty good to good, it ranges. And obviously all these guys have had their slumps. Ian Happ, started very poorly, things like that. But when you don't have the elite star at the top, pretty good, solid, whatever word you want to use, it's not enough. It's not enough to have that sustainable offense, which is the concern that we shared coming into the season. So overall, for some of these guys, Ian Happ being one of them, numbers look really good. But when you put it all together, it speaks to the larger roster construction that we can't just sit here and say, hell yeah, great season for me and Happ. It's like, well, it's another solid season, but it's just that. And we're still missing the person that kind of puts it all over the edge. I want to keep talking about Happ. I want to keep talking about the offense. One more quick break here from our sponsors, and then we will get back into Chicago Cubs baseball.
If you need to hire, you need Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. Maybe Jed Hoyer needs to use Indeed, Corey. And Indeed does not just help you hire faster. 93% of employers agree that Indeed delivers the highest quality matches compared to other job sites, according to a recent Indeed survey. Join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great and talent fast. And listeners of the show get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at indeed.com/allcity. Just go to indeed.com/allcity right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/allcity. Terms and conditions do apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed.
And as we come back and talk about Happ, the 2 RBI on Friday, 6 RBI, 2 homer on the 4th of July to win that game against the Phillies. Ian Happ is our Illinois Pork Producers Power Player of the Week. He provided the power this week for the Chicago Cubs, presented by Illinois Pork Producers. Savor the flavor, savor the gains, and celebrate any occasion by enjoying the best pork produced by Illinois pig farmers. Congratulations to Ian Happ. He's not an all-star, but he is our Pork Power Player of
That's
the Week.
even more important than being an
more
all-star.
prestigious.
I think so.
Yes.
I think so.
So looking back, again, what I bring all that up to say is that you and I have spent a lot of time talking about the lineup. We've talked so much about the team, the roster construction, and a lot of it, if you happen to listen to Brendan and I and, other members of the CHGO Cubs team and the Cubs blogging and writing and podcasting space, a lot of it is concerns we shared in the offseason. So if you want to hear my thoughts on the roster construction, you could probably go to an episode in November and my thoughts would be the same as they are today, as we expressed annoyance with last week. But I bring up those numbers about Happ, Seiya, Michael Busch, because we want to make sure that we're highlighting things that are going well. And even if the sort of response to that is, well, there's, still not good enough. They still have the, 5th lowest OPS in baseball, things like that. Doesn't mean these guys aren't performing. And as we always say, it's not the individual player's fault that the roster was constructed in a certain way that asked them to do things they weren't capable of or shouldn't be asked of. But all told, the inconsistency with Happ is certainly something that is not context that you just throw away. The fact that he does have, and starts the season with a month that isn't good and then gets hot, that month still matters, or whatever the time period is. So the inconsistency is still something that isn't the most enjoyable thing. But on the whole, he's going to put up, and we said this at the time when he was really struggling, we urged people, to move away from let him ride the bench, put him, make him the 4th outfielder, this or this, stop playing him, whatever, because he gets there. He gets there year after year to a pretty similar level of production that matches what he's paid. But sometimes I think when we hammer the roster construction and the team not being good and this and that, I don't want the players that are actually performing well to get lost in the shuffle. So that's really why I wanted to highlight those numbers.
Well, lucky for you, it's just 2 players to talk about that are doing well. Actually, 3 if you put Seiya in the conversation as well. But it's there's a lot of nuance to it. The risk with the front office was paying these guys 15 to 25-ish million across the board, but in reality, they expected more. In a vacuum, these contracts do kind of make sense. Even for as much angst and anger and vitriol towards Dansby Swanson, his offense is really not that far away from his norm. But is that good enough? Absolutely not. Is that good enough with a bloated payroll at 230 million where you're paying your shortstop 27 million to be that subpar of an offensive bat? No, that's a massive problem. That's why when we talk about the good and the bad, I'm always framing it in the context, well, can this be improved or is this a lost cause? We've had lost causes and those discussions in the past. Jason Hayward was one of them. He was a lost cause. There was not much in the data or even in history to suggest he would turn it around during that time. But when you look at some of these other players, whether it be Ian Happ or whether it be even Dansby Swanson, or we see some of the under the hood numbers for Christopher Morel, it's not good enough. But it doesn't mean that they can't eventually get there. And in this baseball environment, with everything changing so fast, I remind myself that I can't really expect anything in the next even few weeks. I don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
So I try to put myself more in a patient mindset, even though I am very, very disappointed across the board at this
Yeah.
entire organization.
Well, and I think, this episode was mostly positive. I do, before we get out, I do want to ask you about Hunter Biggie and just what to expect, what we're looking at there. I'm hoping we continue to see more of this. Let's see that. And people have said this, and I know you don't want to rush guys, et cetera, but like, let's see the kids. Like, let Ethan Roberts throw. Let Hunter come in. Let Luke Little develop and try to get better. Let Porter Hodge continue to throw. Who cares if they struggle? Who cares? You let Hector Neris, who actually looked really good, in certain.
Oh, we should clip that. Hector Neris looks pretty good.
No, in certain outings, the stuff has looked better than it did at the beginning of the year. That's all I was going to say.
Okay.
Still walking the tightrope, plenty. But you watched him blow game after game and walking guys and all this other stuff, and he's still out there. You're still letting him go out there and pitch in close games, pitch in high leverage. Let the young guys do it. Learn some stuff. Let these guys get the experience now so that you come in next offseason and you're not asking these questions about these guys.
Yeah.
Porter Hodge can do it. Porter Hodge can be in this bullpen and occupy whatever role you feel comfortable with by that point. But I'm glad to see more of this happening. But, just finishing on the offense, really just the team as a whole. So what I was going to say is it's a mostly positive podcast, but I went to the game on Saturday, and Brendan, what was really frustrating, Tyler Anderson has been really good. He's got a sub-3 ERA. He's been good for a few years now. He's a good pitcher.
Mhm.
But the execution against him was so painful and frustrating. The amount of innings that were 7-8 pitches, guys going up there. I mean, there were multiple innings the Cubs made 2 outs on 3 pitches or less to start the inning. And we've seen it throughout the week. I think there was the one game against the Phillies where they had 5 1-2-3 innings.
Yeah.
Just some of the, I don't know if it's the game plan. I don't know if it's
Well, you even saw that today on Sunday. The first 2 innings were just like quick innings.
Yeah. And again, I don't know if it's a game plan thing, a scouting thing, an individual hitter thing. They're up there, they see a pitch, they just aren't, doing anything with it. I don't know what the exact thing is. It might be different from batter to batter, but there are so many games where it just feels like they are speeding through, like they're almost going up there and trying to make outs as quickly as they possibly can.
That's what
they're not making pitchers work. They are not working deep counts. They are not taking advantage of young pitchers, guys with bad numbers. And then when they face the good ones, they let them eat them alive. And there's just too much of that. So I'm not sure, again, what that is pinpointed on, if it's a strategy thing, a game plan thing, an execution thing. I don't know. But so many of these games, just non-competitive on the offensive side, not the entire game necessarily, but certain innings, 1, 2, 3, 9 pitches, 1, 2, 3, 10 pitches, just wastes of innings. And it's always a good, I have a different one on today, Brendan. I don't know if you can
Let's
see
see
that.
it. What does that say? What does that
It's a
say?
World Series champions logo from the
For
2016 Chicago Cubs.
the 2016 Cubs.
Yeah.
Oh,
Who won the
okay.
World Series.
Oh, okay.
Not always to relate everything back to that, but one of the hallmarks of that team was their relentless approach against starting pitchers. And I always think back to one of those midseason series against the Mets. They faced Syndergaard. I think they faced DeGrom. They might have faced Matt Harvey too, whoever it was. Steven Matz. I don't remember the 2016 Mets. They never won anything, so it doesn't matter.
Nope.
But you think back to that team and how often they would chase a really good pitcher. Even if they didn't put up a ton of runs, they would chase him by the 5th inning. And then they would make the bullpen work. And especially at the beginning of a series, then you start to wear down the bullpen, stuff like that. This team has none of that juice.
Yeah.
I don't expect them to compete with one of the best teams we've ever seen in the 2016 Chicago Cubs. But I use it as an example of, even if you're not doing a ton of damage, there are ways to affect the opposing pitching staff. There are ways to be effective on offense, even if you're not scratching runs across, you're not hitting homers, you're not getting hits. And this team just does none of that. Quite the opposite. They make things really, really easy on opposing pitchers way too often. Low stress innings, quick at bats, quick outs, playing into what pitchers want them to do too often. I feel like, how often do we see, hey, this guy's a ground ball pitcher, he's going to try to goad you hitting the ball on the ground. And the Cubs are like, sure, you want to hit the ball on the ground? No problem. We can do that for you. So that is one thing, especially on Saturday, we saw that. Like, I'd really like to see better efforts. Again, not an effort thing, but whether it's game plan execution, just better outcomes on those things than
Anecdotally, it
these
seems
easy.
yeah. Anecdotally, it seems that for whatever reason, they're not executing, and their aggressive game plan, if that is what was going on, was just not executing. I'm
Yeah.
excited though to see like Hunter Biggie come up. Porter Hodge
Yeah. Tell me
came
about him
in.
a little bit.
Yeah, Porter Hodge came in Sunday's
Well,
7th inning.
before you tell me about Hunter Biggie, let me ask you a question about the roster spot that he is occupying, which is that of Colton Brewer,
Yeah,
who broke his hand punching a
God bless him.
wall in frustration. Now, you this is
He cares, Corey.
you never want to go full Andy Bernard, Brendan, and punch a hole straight in a wall. Not something you want to do. What I wanted to ask you, though, have you ever been in your Cubs fandom
Oh,
close
come on.
to being that
You're s
angry?
you're setting me up. You're setting me up. I broke you know the story.
Or
I broke a
or happy,
blind.
doesn't matter.
I broke my blinds when I was like 11 years old. Antonio Alfonseca gave up a home run against the St. Louis Cardinals. I took a pillow. I hated Alfonseca. No offense to him. Broke those blinds like a Hunter Biggie fastball. Straight there, boom, blinds off. Was let's say I was not I got
The
punished. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, the only thing that I can think, I've been angry enough, but that's not really my anger move. I'm more of a kind of like stew in silence and things like that. Um,
You do get more
or
angry than me
swearing or
though.
things like that, but I'm not really like a punch or throw things kind of guy. The only time I came something similar to that, and I think I've told this story to you before, when Javi hit the homer off John Lackey in 2015 against the Cardinals, after Jason Hamill got the base hit up the middle,
Yeah.
I was so pumped. I was like smacking the chair in front of me.
I'm
And
sure the
it's like
people
one of
love
those things,
that.
the adrenaline was so high that you just don't notice it. And then like an inning later, I like turned to my friend and I'm like, I think I broke my hand like on
It's
that
worth
home
it
run.
though. It's worth
I
it.
might have. All right. So tell me about Hunter Biggie. Tell me what we're looking for. What should fans be expecting? And yeah, just, he was obviously having a really nice run in the minors there. A lot of people really excited and kind of clamoring for him to come up and get this opportunity. So what are we seeing with this opportunity?
He's gonna come in games. He's gonna be throwing 98 to 100 miles per hour. You like velocity, he's your guy. He has a little bit more carry than your average fastball at about 18, 19 inches of induced vertical break. Doesn't have that much arm side of run. Slightly within the average tier, but nothing that's super leaky, if you will. Uh, in addition to his four-seam fastball, cutter once every 3 pitches. His cutter it's unique. It's almost not a true cutter. Throws it 88 miles per hour, but he has a lot of horizontal on that pitch. So it's almost classified as a slider, I think, even though it's not technically being classified as a slider. It has 5.5 inches of horizontal break. Your average slider has 7 inches. But again, this is 88 miles per hour. So take your average slider, which is thrown around 85, 86, and just dial it up on the miles per hour. And that's Hunter Biggie's slider. The cool thing about him is I don't anticipate platoon splits if he can command well. And that's always a big problem with these high stuff guys is them commanding well. But he does have the ability to use that cutter because it is tight to left-handed batters maybe, but he also has a more relatively slower curveball. If he wants to use that, he can use a curveball around 81, 82, 83 miles per hour. And that thing is going to drop down like crazy. It's going to be more of like that more north to south profile that you see even Jameson Taillon use. Taillon's curveball is about 10 inches of drop and 10 inches of cut. For Biggie, it's only 9 inches of cut, but 15 inches of drop. So it's a pretty big wipeout pitch that he might be able to use left-handed batters rather than rely on maybe more of a sweepy horizontal type pitch. I'm excited. He's one of those rare, unique stuff guys that we've been clamoring for. He's similar in regards to Porter Hodge and that they're unique stuff guys. He's also similar in regards to what we saw from Jeremiah Estrada in years past, where they were interesting, but ultimately they did not work on the Cubs. I'm more optimistic with Hunter Biggie compared to Jeremiah Estrada because of just the trajectory of his development, the multitude of pitches he has, and how he succeeded so far in AAA. So I am excited. I want to see that command get dialed in ultimately, but stuff is great. I'm cautiously turning a little bit optimistic about the quality of arms at the back of the bullpen, especially with Leiter Jr. getting back soon, Merriweather coming back soon. There's a world in which it's not this bad going forward, but it does seem far away.
Yeah. Well, wouldn't that be nice?
It would be nice.
So setting the table here, last 6 games before the All-Star break, off day on Monday, then 3 in Baltimore with the Orioles. Best of luck to the Chicago Cubs in that series. Have fun with that. And then 4 in St. Louis, doubleheader on Saturday, making up for one of those rainouts. I think the last time the Cubs were in St. Louis, I believe the very infamous missed Shota start is what we're making up this weekend. So
Okay.
that is what we have. Then, Monday, the home run derby. And then the 16th is the All-Star game, again, of which the lone representative for the Chicago Cubs is Shota Imanaga. Congratulations to him. Well deserved. That's it. Looking at the standings, the Cubs are in last place in their division. They are 11 games out of first place. As you can see on our YouTube screen there, our very wonderful Showtime shirt, an excellent addition to your closet that is already filled with CHGO merch, I'm sure. Looking at the standings, the Cubs in dead last in the NL Central by half a game, but behind the Reds, still dead last. It doesn't really matter. And they remain the furthest away in the National League wildcard race of teams that are not 15 games out, which are the Colorado Rockies and Miami Marlins. Every other team in the National League is piled up in front of the Chicago Cubs. They're either winning their division or they are ahead of them in the wildcard race, which by my math, you have 3 teams holding a wildcard spot, the Braves, Cardinals, Padres. And then in order, the Diamondbacks, Mets, Giants, Pirates, Reds, Nationals, and then the Cubs. So that's a lot of teams, Brendan. It may only be 5.5 games, but that is an awful lot of teams to hurdle over, especially when you have a 7-game road trip coming up, playing a now over 500 Cardinals team who has found their way to playing decent baseball, and the Orioles, one of the best teams
Just
and
win all
offenses
the games.
in
It's
the
not
league.
that hard.
So
all 7 games.
Yes, I'm not sure how everybody feels, but I don't know how everybody feels. I don't know if you feel like the nail is already in the coffin. the coffin is in the ground. They're not in the. I don't know. I really don't
They
know.
win all 7 games. They kick the
this
coffin
week
thing
for
open.
sure. At the very least, though, Brendan has the potential to act as the hammer that maybe pushes those nails in a little further.
Yeah, maybe Wilson Contreras hammers the Cubs down. Wouldn't that be something?
Ugh,
you and I come on the show on Sunday. I'm just thinking dark.
That's like
thinking dark.
maximum misery. Yeah.
A nice Wilson Contreras walk-off home run on Sunday for the Cubs to go 12 games under 500. How about that?
Ugh, bleak.
That would be fun.
So that's what we have for you. Thank you guys for tuning in. Rainy day here in the great city of Chicago. An okay week for the Cubs, I suppose. They dropped the series to the Phillies. Bad baseball at certain points in that series. And then win a series against a bad Angels team. So could have been worse. I think, maybe with this Angels series, you would have liked to take another one. Could have been better. I don't know. It was another week of Chicago Cubs baseball. That's how I would sum it up. They played very similar to how they have for the last couple months. It's kind of par for the course at this point. So we will see. It's a tough schedule week for the Cubs and then the All-Star break. So we will see where that gets us. Brendan and I will be back with you next Sunday to break it all down and kind of see where we're at with this team officially at the All-Star break. Congratulations to Shota Imanaga on his All-Star Game nomination. We appreciate our wonderful producer, Sarah, for sticking with us today on this Sunday. Brendan and I will talk to you next Sunday. As always, appreciate your support for the CHGO Cubs podcast and everything going on at CHGO. We will talk to you again soon. Tune in with the boys tomorrow, Luke, Cody, Ryan, for your off-day show. And other than that, we'll talk to you soon. Thank you. And as always, go Cubs.
We all silly like the mayor.